I'm preparing to live stream now, so it's just setting up and see a live in the corner. When we go, there we go. Okay, am I lagging already? Hopefully not. Okay. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn for November. I am Sandra Santa Buckles. I am the PR and development person at Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. We set up these lunch and learns to bring resources to those at home who do not have accessibility to resources, or maybe just don't know that things are out there. We all share so much information and have so much information to share that I wanted to create this venue as a way to support people that may not be in our normal circles or maybe don't live close or what have you. So this month we're talking about grief during the holiday season. We're in November. It's kind of that time where families are getting together, and many of us are grieving. I think it's something important to talk about because it's completely normal for us to talk about mental health and where we live in any given space, and to make sure that we are providing safe spaces for those that need them. Joining me today are Rick Wiggs, who is one of our board members and a survivor of homicide. Joyce Conyers, also a survivor and on our board, who she will turn her camera on shortly when she's situated. And then Melinda Lawson is joining us from Roberta's house. I just wanted to go through really quick and you guys can do an introduction to yourself. And then Melinda, when we get to you, you can also introduce Roberta's house. So let's start with Rick, because you're on my top screen. So.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's 12:05. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Sandra said, I am Rick Wiggs. I am a survivor, homicide survivor. I lost my wife in a shooting back in 1992. She was a stalking victim, and I was shot first in the incident. And, one of the things that, as what Sandra introduced, is the getting through the grief process through Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, the holiday season, and what things you're going to anticipate. But that's who I am.
Thanks, Rick. Melinda, did you want to go ahead since Joyce is off screen right now?
Sure. My name is Melinda, and I am the program director for Roberta's house. I work with homicide survivors, the adults and the children from 7 to 17. I direct those programs at PG County and Baltimore County. A little bit about my background. I am a thanatologist, and thanatology is the study of death, dying, and bereavement. And what made me qualified to be at Roberta's house was that because I did the degree in thanatology and I worked with soldiers going away to war, counseling them. I did a program where I counseled children whose parents had died. And then I worked at Hospice of the Chesapeake doing bereavement counseling and honor salute for veterans that were dying. And then I went on to the Living Legacy where I did requests for tissue donation. And then finally I ended up at Roberta's house directly working with homicide survivors. So I do 2 bereavement groups. And from time to time we have drop-in groups for people that are suffering during times where we might not have a group, because our groups are 10 weeks. So by the 3rd or 4th week, we try not to introduce any additional people to the group because it can be a source of disruption, because they've already gotten to a point through the group and then someone else is new and has to introduce their loved one to the group, and we have already passed that, and sometimes it re-traumatizes. So the holidays proves to be very challenging for bereavement survivors and people going through grief. And depending on how, recent the loss was, it's what I would tell them to do, or the tool, we give them tools to survive the holidays and really survive and work through their grief process. But the holiday provides a challenge because you have all the traditions and you've been dealing with each other. And sometimes this is the only time that families get together and commune with each other. So then the loss of that person is very evident. So within the first maybe few months, because we see anybody that's had a homicide between a few weeks, and then we have some reoccurs that come back to group that the homicide may be 3 years ago. The advice I would give is different from someone from 3 weeks to 3 years, because someone that's just experienced a loss during the holidays, they don't want to know anything about a holiday. They don't want to celebrate. They don't want to participate. You know, they're barely making it from day to day, barely getting out of bed. So sometimes they just cancel the holidays altogether. Or some may push through the holidays because they might have minor children that they still need to put up the front. But what I found with a lot of my survivors in my group is they're like, I barely got my clothes on to come to group today.
Right. And we can dive a little bit more into that as we get through our discussion today. So thank you so much. And we're so glad to have you join us. Joyce, are you available to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Joyce Conyers, and my son, Willie Herman Baskerville, was murdered in 2001 unjustly for no reason. And I've been in this program basically since that time, and it has helped me through everything from the legal aspects to just trying to heal healthy. And hopefully some words that I'll give today or feelings can be of encouragement to someone else.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And yes, that's absolutely my goal is in having this. And so let's just hop right in. Melinda kind of touched on it a little bit when she was talking about how long a person has been gone. And, does that make a difference in how we deal with people and how we deal with grief? Because, once you miss a person, that missing doesn't go away. And I think that, that's clearly evident in so many aspects of life. Life isn't the same after that person goes. So what are your thoughts on as far as I guess how much time has passed, how you treat people, or how you make sure that you're still being supportive to those that may need it? You might not even know where to stand internally, right? I guess I'll go to Rick first, because he and I spoke about this a little bit. How do we make sure, as just someone, how do we make sure that people that are approaching things sensitively?
Everything is pretty much based on what your relationship was before everything happened. When, as far as other family members or friends who now would know or trying to understand what you're going through. Sometimes people they think that, they should try to help you move along, but it's all up to you. What are you losing when that person that you loved is gone? What in the holiday hits? What happens? What am I thinking about when Christmas hits? What am I thinking about when Thanksgiving hits? Where she's not going to be here or he's not going to be here. There's the elephant in the room kind of syndrome where they don't want to talk about that individual, and they don't know or understand that maybe talking about them in a delightful sense could bring you to the table, could allow you to sit back and build a new, concept of memories. Sudden death, unfortunately, doesn't prepare you for sudden regular holidays. It's one of those situations about how long does it take. Actually, it's how long does it take for you to accept the way they comprehend you. not how you know,
That's right.
they comprehend you. It's, you know, so when for me, for instance, at the time when Sharon was killed, my daughters were 4 years old and 5 months old. Um, Everyone naturally wanted holidays for them to move forward, but I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And fortunately, my mother, who was living at the time, did encourage that, but she also understood that all I had to do was come out, get a plate, and go back to my place, and not, you know, and she was living with me, but go back to my room. And that way, it still gave her an opportunity to celebrate with the girls, and for me to try to get adjusted to this next holiday that's coming, you know. And so there's no time set to adjust in regards of how, like I said, what people think about how you should be doing. Is how you accept what they're giving and moving forward. That's all.
That's
Mhm.
right. Melinda?
Yeah, I agree with him. There's no set limit on grief. You can grieve for the rest of your life. This is somebody that touched your life in a different kind of way. It wasn't a random person. A lot of my survivors are parents. I often tell them, you know, you grew this life in you and now they're gone. No one can tell you when you can stop grieving. The grieving won't be as intense 10, 15 years from now, but grief is like a roller coaster. You're doing well, and then something triggers an emotion, and then you find yourself 15 years after the death being melancholy around the time of the death, or even more than 15 years. My grandmother gave me an example of, and that was before I got into bereavement counseling and different things, but her mom died when she was young, way before I was born. And at this time when we were having this conversation, I was in my 20s, and she was like, I always get sad around the holidays because I miss my mom. So grief can be forever. Just the intensity of it changes, and where we allocate that person into our lives change, because they're not front and center like in the beginning. And the grief is not as intense in the beginning because you have become to accept that that person is no longer here, and you've kind of put them in a different place. So you think about them at different times, and you may cry over it, you know, shortly and briefly as the years go on, but you will still feel that way, especially when there's milestones. For example, if you're a parent and you lost your spouse, it could be years from now and your children were young. Every milestone of your child, you're going to miss that parent, that person. So if it's a birthday, you're going to feel it. When that person is supposed to graduate from high school and you were going to be together at that graduation, you're going to think about that and feel it. When that your daughter has a wedding and you have to give her away, or you would have thought that, for example, Mr. Wiggs, your wife would have been there to help her try on her dress, you're going to feel it. Those are the times, no matter how far along you are in your grief, can bring you back into the roller coaster of, oh my God, this is feeling intense right now. And why am I feeling this way? Because it's been X amount of years. I keep telling people there is no time limit to your grief. It's just a change in how much grief and when it happens. So you can be just driving down the street and see somewhere where you hung out and that grief comes back, or a moment or a song or a scent. So it's a lot of things. So basically we give people tools. We try to give people tools in order to function in a better way. But I tell you, like I told the children that I gave bereavement counseling to, because they never wanted to come to me. No one wants to go to a counselor. No one usually thinks that they need a counselor, especially in the Black community. So when they come to me, I said, it is not my job to help you forget your mom or dad. It's my job to help you cry less and laugh more when you think about them.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that was, I mean, Rick was right there and, you know, feeling every minute of it. Rick,
Yeah, she's right.
I felt like she was just straight talking to you on that
Yeah,
one with your daughter's wedding. And
yeah, my daughter married back in April. It was destination wedding.
I'm like, maybe
And
she's a little bit psychic too. Maybe.
yeah, it was a destination wedding. It was down in Jamaica. And what my ex-wife, no, not my ex-wife, did for the wedding, she had pictures of their mother placed in a chair and a
Mhm.
picture of the groom's mother placed in the chair. So it was almost as feeling that she was actually there. And as Melinda stated, the dress, there's a picture of my daughter with my late wife's sister together trying on. And that didn't break me down. It made me feel much more closer that
Mhm.
she was there still. So yeah,
Yeah.
she hit me. She hit me below the belt on that one. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, and I want to touch on that in a second. Let me just get back to Joyce because she didn't get an opportunity. Did you want to add anything to the length of time situation? I know that Melinda was touching on the spousal situation, but I know, you've lost your son, and I know from our conversations as well that you have some feelings on lengths of time and things like that.
Well, I lost my son a couple of days after Christmas, the day before his son's 5th birthday. So that day before, or that week before, we were planning a party for a 5-year-old. And, like you can only imagine, you just had Christmas, and then my son gets murdered. And the next day, I have to figure out how I'm going to do this birthday party for a 5-year-old that's so close to his dad like this, and explain, not only was your dad murdered and he's never coming back, but why isn't he here right now? And we just got finished talking about a cake like a day ago. So,
So these holidays are right at
right.
your
So
same time frame as well.
the holidays, it was like I didn't even have a chance to like say, okay,
Recover.
I don't want to do this holiday. I had to do it. Then the first of the year and the birthday, it was one thing after the other. And for the first probably 2 years, I don't know, even longer than that, I just felt like I was in limbo because, you see everyone else enjoying Christmas with their sons. And then my youngest son, I was trying to explain it to him as well because his big brother was like that, the big brother that's always there and everything. So I would say for length of time, there's absolutely no length of time. And your loved one, no matter what, they're always going to be in your heart at any given moment. And just like Melinda was saying that, for a while you could be good and it could be 10 years later, you're riding across Woodrow Wilson Bridge and you just fall completely apart. And I just feel now you got to allow yourself for those things to happen and, try to see if your loved one was here, like how would they feel about how we're living now? And my child was like a happy child, like any kind of holiday or whatever was his thing. So it didn't matter. It could be Leprechaun Day. Let's put up whatever, and I want to try to keep that going in my family and in my household. And now his son is 24, the age that happened to him. And he just bought his first car. And when I was looking at him, when he was purchasing the car, it was like, I was kind of looking at the mirror of my child. And I said, I could only imagine the joy that they would be having right now because my son built cars. So longevity, I think it's no such thing in the grieving world. I just think that somehow another God or wherever your faith is allows your human self to enjoy the time that you had together and know that our time here on this earth is short.
Yes.
Thank you. So, I mean, there were so many questions that I had and topics that I wanted to touch with you guys. So I'm going to try to get through the kind of clump these questions together that I sent to you guys, because I told you guys the time goes really fast and it's already 12:20. So, so I guess let me just join these two things together, because we talked about longevity and how long people grieve, and they can just grieve indefinitely, clearly. And so one of the other things is, there's all these feelings that come with it. And, when I spoke to each one of you guys, I have mentioned, like, that I lost my mom. It wasn't to homicide. It wasn't to crime, but I lost her almost 5 years ago. And so some of the feelings that you guys have, of course, I feel like, I lost my mom. It was early, it was fast, it was unexpected, it was whatever it is. What about the difference of it being because of a criminal act? What about those feelings of being angry at someone for taking that life? Is it fair to compare my grief to others? Like, is it okay for me to feel at one, or maybe imagine a portion of maybe what you guys are going through? Like, I never want to be insincere with my thoughts, but I always try to understand people. And I think most people that are in your lives during the holidays, you surround yourself with these amazing people that are part of your life, hopefully amazing people that are part of your life, and all want to be encouraging, and they all want to be supportive. Let's talk about, is it okay to compare? So one of the questions that even someone included was, is all grief the same? What's the difference in loss by illness or homicide? How do you respond to someone who's comparing the loss of a child to a pet? Can you be mad at God? Like, these are so many questions. Who wants to tackle that first? I'm throwing it out there.
I can tackle it. All grief is different. You can have the same kind of death. You can lose the same child, and it still be different for each one, because your experiences make it different. For example, a child that was murdered, there's two parents, both children were murdered. One child might have been an exemplary student and never gotten into any trouble or any problems. And then there's that other parent, the child was murdered, that gave a little bit of problem. There was some ambivalence in their relationship. So even in saying that, two parents, same situation, the grief is different. All of our experiences and everything that we've gone through in life and the way things happen often makes the grief different. And what I try to do is not try to do a blanket of everybody's grieving, because just as I said, everybody grieves in a different way according to their experience. Some people have not been modeled well on how to grieve because they never had to see it. For example, like you were saying, you've never had a tragic loss. I counsel women on a regular basis who's had loss of kids through homicide or their husband or spouses or whatever. However, I've never had a significant loss outside of my grandmother. My grandmother passed away of age, but I'm still able to give comfort, and we can do that. We should never compare losses, because that loss is significant to that person. You can talk about your experience, you can talk about your loss, but never say, well, I know how you feel, because we don't. Our experiences make us different. Our cultures makes us different. The people that we interact with creates a different kind of loss and grief. As far as pet loss, I am very sensitive to pet loss, because for some, that pet is like a significant other. It's like their child. So I lost my dog a year ago. I never wanted a dog. I'm not a pet person. However, when they placed this little dog in my life and he took over, he became like my child, and I sincerely grieved over him. So had you told me, because I've had him for 15 years, so even 16 years ago that I would be grieving a pet, I'm like, you're crazy. And 16 years ago, if they told me I would have been carrying a pet in a pet holder, I was like, who? However, my grief was significant because that dog was there for 15 years when my daughter was 10 and been through holidays, and he was there when my grandmother was there. There's a lot of traditions and family activities that we included him with. And they were like, that's Melinda's spoiled dog. And he ran the house. He was a little chihuahua, came up to your ankle, but he ran the house and it was like his house. And we just respected that. And he trained us. So in saying that, the amount of affection that I've had for him and the loss that I felt when he passed. And I will share something else with you. I am a cancer survivor in January, it'll be 3 years. When I did 7 surgeries, he lasted until I was well. And he was like bedside to me the whole time. So pets do hold a significant place in our grievers' hearts. So for us to minimize and say, well, you lost a dog, but I lost a person, I wouldn't advise anyone to say that.
That is so, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think that it's so easy for us to, I've lost a dog as well. It's so, and I have lost people to homicide, but not anyone that was like, you know, my spouse, you know, my children, or anything like that. And I think that, you know, it is important not to minimize other people's grief, right? Like I would never say, oh, well, Joyce's grief, it was 20 years ago, so it doesn't matter as much as someone, like, no, that's not how we support each other, right? Like, I think that it's always important for all of us to lift each other up and not, I guess, degrade other people's feelings. I guess that's the message that you're sending, Linda. So I definitely appreciate that as well. I've got comments in the chat box. I'm going to read them after I go ahead and get.
Yeah, I think the most important part that everyone has to understand is we're talking about the loss of life, the loss of life itself. I think what throws many people off is just the concept of understanding the why it happened. That's what throws people into different situations and thinking that, you know, there's no comparison and all this all, like what was stated before, loss of a pet, loss of a parent, loss of a child, they're all a loss. It's life. It's what we're talking. We're not talking about a potted plant. We're talking about something that touched our heart and something that reached deep into our soul. So it's a matter of knowing how to respond when you get the comment. It's sitting back and saying, okay, I can only talk to this person about fried chicken and potato salad from this point on, because we have nothing really that we can talk about. But if we sit back and say, I understand your loss, you know, I grieve my mother who unfortunately passed from breast cancer over 25 years ago. I grieve my wife from homicide 30 years ago. But it's a matter of me personally having that time. One of the things I did was I never did it openly, to my knowledge, around my children. Because one of the misconceptions is that your children are going to go through it as rough, as hard as you do. No, you put the oxygen on yourself to return to save yourself before you can touch your children. So then if they grow up, people say, how are the girls doing? I go, they're fine. I didn't sit there and bleed it all over them.
So, I mean, I guess, you know, let's open up that can of worms. Let's open up that can of worms. Melinda touched on it earlier, and I wanted to absolutely jump right in. Let's talk about races and grieving and mental health and gender. I mean, I feel like us women, we'll grieve, right? We'll just be in a huddle. And, you know, you men though, Rick, I'm gonna pick on you for a second. You men always real secretive about your grieving and your feelings, right?
Yes.
Right. And so I've shared with you guys my father-in-law. I'm sorry, go ahead, Joyce.
I'm sorry, not always. Men grieve, and they grieve just as hard as women do, and sometimes even more. And it's just like we had a recent event, and I'm just going to say this. I knew at a point in Rick's time when we were talking, like everything just came onto him. It was almost like he forgot everything that was going on. And that is the love that he has for his wife, you know. And when you lose someone that's so near and dear to you, it's that love. It doesn't matter if that child did something that society says, oh, it's not acceptable, compared to a child that did something that got all A's in school. That doesn't matter. What matters is the love that you have for that person. And I see men grieve hard, and I don't want to send any message out there that they don't, because that's absolutely not true. Sometimes people just don't pay attention. And just like my son is 30 years old, and the youngest son is 30 now, and that happened in 2001. And my son went through such a devastating grieving period, you know, to a point of like a kind of like a nervous breakdown. And we have to stop thinking that because someone is stronger or more masculine, that they're not grieving or they're not looking at things. And then sometimes I even hear people say that about me, like, you're so strong, you've handled so much in your life. But inside, I have lost it all. And to me, that's just annoying. So I don't do that to anyone, and I don't compare the loss of my son to the loss of the death that they found. I just say my love was with my loved one. It's always going to be there, and nothing is going to end up.
Yeah. And I definitely, I joke as far as, men grieving. Of course, we know that they grieve. I think that, normalizing, asking for that assistance is really, like Melinda touched on it, with, the African-American population. I know that with my culture as well, a lot of people, they don't want to ask for help. They don't think that they need help, or they think that they can get through it on their own. I come from a family of very vocal females, and our males in our family are, they take the back seat because I think the women talk too much. I don't think it's anything else except the women talk too much. And, but I think that it is important for us to make sure that people are supported regardless of gender across all cultures and nationalities. I just think that sometimes it's just not the norm to ask for help.
Right.
And for me, like, it's always like, I told Rick, like, I would love to have you on there because I love having men speak to their feelings, to normalize sharing feelings for other people, because we can't just wallow in, being alone and thinking that, there's not support for you.
There's men are, let me just go ahead and just say that men are willing to talk or speak about grief,
If they
but
feel
someone has to open the door for them. They have to see another man speak first.
And that brings, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that brings me to Roberta's House has this program called MOLD, Men of Loyalty and Dignity, which is a men's bereavement group. Because what we found was that men sometimes have a form of disenfranchised grief. They have to be strong for the people that are around them, like you have to be strong for your girls. But we are also teaching or patterning or making mold of how to grieve. So sometimes it is important for our children to see us in the grieving process, because we're actually making patterns of how to grieve so that they can successfully grieve when things happen to them or when they experience a significant loss. Again, with the disenfranchised grief, Joyce was actually absolutely correct. Men do grieve, but they grieve in silence and by themselves sometimes. Or they feel like they shouldn't be grieving. They should be strong, just like we women sometimes think we should be strong. And I am glad that your sons were comfortable and trusted you, because trust is also necessary in the grieving process where men are concerned. They need to be able to trust that they can be vulnerable around you without being judged, especially in the Black community. So that's why Roberta's House created Mold. And I have to correct myself. Earlier I said 7 to 70 because it sounds good, 7 to 70, but it's actually 2 to 17 for the children and adults from whatever age you come into.
To whatever, yeah, gotcha.
But with me mentioning that one child could be exemplary and another might have been a problem in the community or might have been part of the cause of their demise, it creates a disenfranchised grief for the family, because for that person, for you, that person is everything and they could have did no wrong. And that's how you should think of how your loved one. When you lose someone, you don't think about all the bad things they ever did or what society said about them. It's your loss. You carried this child and they should be special to you. And that's part of the problem with disenfranchised grief, because sometimes parents who the kids weren't, or the husband or whoever weren't the perfect person in society is saying, why are you grieving? For example, if your child was a murderer.
Yeah.
Right.
Jeffrey Dahmer's
And I
mother
was
and
going to
father
say that about
grieved.
Jeffrey Dahmer too.
Yeah,
Yep.
their mother and father grieved significantly, but society was like, how can you grieve for this monster? That was their child.
And I think that it's so interesting that you bring that up. And then I want to read this comment that's in the chat box because I think it's pertinent. But that our Roberta, because I know you guys are Roberta's house, but our Roberta, I've had conversations with her where, when Stephanie was murdered, they were like, well, what was she doing out at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what difference does it make what she was doing out? And in actuality, she had went into DC with, her girlfriends, and she was a college student, like, whatever. But she was like, it doesn't, and there's a quote in her book where she literally says, what difference does it make if she was out at 2 o'clock in the morning? Even if she was a prostitute walking across the street, it doesn't mean her to be murdered.
No one should take her
Absolutely.
life.
And I think that is, I wanted to bring that up because it actually just gave me goosebumps because, no one deserves to have their life taken, regardless of whether there's an altercation or regardless of, whatever's happened. Like, no one is to be the judge of another person's life and when it should end. But I wanted to read this comment from Deandra Jackson. I hope I'm saying that right. And she said that her female children grieve differently. She lost her son. So her female children grieve differently than her male child over the loss of their brother. My son chooses not to be involved in any groups or family activities involving his brother, whereas the girls have attended courts, events, and all have tried counseling. Her son will not talk about his death to anyone but me. And so, I think that this is just a prime example of young people where, mom is grieving, the girls are kind of following her role. And I can say that at our recent event that we had, the walk that we had, this gentleman was walking away from our event and I ran. He caught my eye and I ran after him and I was like, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you so much for coming out. And he was like, it was my son that was murdered. His son was, I want to say like 13 or 14 years old. And it was really, really fresh, like within 6 months. And he was like, he really didn't want to talk to anyone about it. He really didn't. He just needed to process his feelings kind of on his own. He said his sister forced him to come out and she made them like matching t-shirts and stuff. And so it was a step for him, but it was really kind of pushed by his sister that was making the moves and forcing his hand. And so definitely, Melinda, I want to share your info again for Roberta's House for that program in our chat box once I grab it from you. Because I think that it is important for us to identify that those males may need, a little bit more than, or different support than some of the females, and definitely want to cross some of those boundaries as far as that. But let me get back into these questions, unless there was anything else you guys wanted to add to these.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to say is promotion. There are many different agencies that support many women initiatives.
Mhm.
But as far as promoting something that's available for men, there's not enough. We don't see it. That's why we don't think about going through. If we knew about going there, it's a possibility we may open the door and go in. So
Gotcha.
that's one of the biggest problems. In our support group, in the Maryland Crime Victim Resource Center support group, the men that have come in, sat back, quiet on the first visit, start speaking on the second visit, took control of themselves on the third visit, and by the fourth visit, they were helping someone else because they knew that they were sitting back, not being judged. They had an opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
but not so much everywhere is like that. The groups that people attend, they must be comfortable with it applying to them. It doesn't mean that it's applicable to everyone, but it has to be applicable. If the commenter stated that the son is speaking probably only with her, at least he's not shutting her out. He
Mhm.
is speaking. That's the start.
That's a great
So
point. That's a
that's
great
all.
point. It is. It is. I definitely appreciate that. And even on, just to everyone out there, watching, is that, I really am trying to kind of cross some of those boundaries in the conversations that we have on these lives. Even during Domestic Violence Month, I mean, people really tend to focus on women, but I made it a point to make sure that we're asking questions about men as well, even with domestic violence or, whatever's going on, that we need to make sure that we're crossing those boundaries and really talking about those uncomfortable topics, because that's the only way that we can learn. And it's the only way that we push out the programs that are available. We learned that Roberta's House has a program specifically made for the male, communities and people in need. It's just a matter of like making sure that people are aware of the resources that are available to them, and that everyone is feeling supported. So I guess, all right, let me hop back into these questions here. What can we say to others that are grieving and that they feel supported without aggravating them? Are there any quick, and let me wrap this other part of this question. Tips or hints to keep loved ones close during the holidays? Talked about like the photo at Rick's daughter's wedding, and things like that. Just kind of dealing with all of those kind of wrapped into the holidays and making sure that we're supporting. Tips, hints.
It was excellent that you guys put the pictures up. Talking about the loved one during the holidays, I'm making them center to the celebration, saying, it would have been nice if Granny, she would have really enjoyed this, kind of incorporating them in a positive way instead of saying, oh my God, she's gone. Say, she would have really laughed at this, or, she really didn't like potato salad like that, kind of incorporate them throughout the day and not act like, it's something that shouldn't be talked about or we shouldn't mention it, because I think that does more harm when you try to avoid the conversation, because there's some people that actually want to talk about it, want to express it, and then they feel like, and especially minor children, they feel like we can't talk about it anymore. And if I talk about it, I might upset my remaining parent or cause, additional grief. So by us modeling, that's what I was trying to remember earlier, by us modeling our behavior, it teaches them how to grieve properly. And it's a lifetime lesson you're teaching them, because this is not going to be their only loss, because we grieve many things throughout our lives: a loss of a job, leaving home for the first time, this different things happen to us. So grief is not always just death related. And then when a death happens, and then our normal grief processes, it's like compound grief, because then you lose a husband or a spouse, but that was the main provider for the family. So you lose an income, you lose the father or the mother of your child, you lose so many things other than just that loss. You lose the relationship with a mother and child. They lose that camaraderie. Your for example, Joyce's son might come up and say, what are you cooking today? And enjoy this special moments, maybe once a week, where he calls and say, hey, what are you doing? Or stops by or checks on her or whatever. that's a loss in itself, because you're missing that relationship that was there before and no longer there. So now you have to figure out, how do you incorporate that person, because you don't want to just like ball them up and throw them away and put them in a box and put them on a shelf. This person is significant to you, and it still remains that way even though they're gone. So it's, how do you incorporate that person in your life and still feel there and feel comfortable enough to say, I am still celebrating my child that is not here. I am still thinking about my spouse that is not here, and that's okay. And you have to be okay with it. We have to make our own boundaries of what is acceptable for us. We're not supposed to let other people dictate our grief. And if
Yeah,
you
one,
grieve, go ahead.
no, what I was going to just say on top of what you're saying, also, you have to understand that unfortunate death also hits us like a ripple. It hits me a certain way, and it hits someone else a certain way, and it hits someone else a certain way. So we can't expect everyone to feel exactly the same way we feel. So we have to also respect why people may not want to speak, because that death it might be their cousin, it might be their other friend, or whatever the case might be, but it might be how they're dealing with it as well.
Yeah, please.
So it's almost like two people clashing. No, we just sit back and we go, that's right. Because I could go this place, but my sister won't.
Right.
I can talk about this, but her sister won't, or her brother won't talk about it. And if I keep bringing it up, that'll keep him away from me. So we have to understand that other people are also suffering that are
Yeah.
relative to us.
Differently.
That's all.
Because all grief is different. However,
Yes.
you have to also respect, like you said, putting the mask on yourself. So in saying that, respecting their grief, because you may all be grieving the same person in a different way.
Right.
But also remember that your responsibility is to yourself. To basically make yourself okay so that you can provide for a lot of my survivors that have, minor children. They feel like they can't go on or don't want to go on, but they're forcing themselves because they have to, and sometimes they don't even care. There's so much in their grief that they're like, I don't want to go on and I'm not doing anything, and they're not worrying about the remaining children. And then sometimes the relationship suffers with the remaining children. But we challenge them to take the moment they need, but understand that they have to recover to become the responsible remaining parent. Because we can't really say, hey, don't worry about your grief, because it's irresponsible for us, because our responsibility is to that actual survivor. But at the end of the day, it's hard for me sometimes when a parent says, and I'm going to be, completely honest. It's hard for me when a parent says, I don't have any strength or energy to do anything else for anybody else. And then, they have two other children that might be 7 and 15 or whatever. And these children are grieving on their own. And then that parent is saying, I don't have it for them. So I have to kind of say, get it for yourself, but try to recover so that you can also be that parent. So it's a fine line with us as therapists, looking for what is beneficial to our clients versus what is holistically beneficial for that client and the family.
Wow.
Because we're like saying, take care of yourself, but also there's that child that you're like, your heart is feeling for, because this parent is saying, I lay in bed, I don't have the strength to move on because of this loss, which is normal and natural. But then it's like, how do you also say, but you still need to take care of this one child and not be judgmental? Because in group, we try to say, don't judge.
And with that, I'm sorry. And
No,
with
no,
that, I
no.
was gonna say too that I'm not a clinician or a doctor, but I do know that, and from having a young child and a grandchild that I still had to be there for, you have to be very careful with that parent, because depending on how you force that parent to jump in could be very detrimental, whether or not they're going to start taking
Right.
care of those younger kids. Because those, like, my son was like only 10 and my grandson was 5. And if I had just totally broke down because someone came and said, oh, you got to move forward because we got these two to look after, I don't know what I would have done. It's like you have to have someone to help you maybe move forward. And for me, it was a lot of prayer, and it was a lot of prayer all the time. And I honestly believe and know that no matter what, it is not the same for everyone. And there are parents that I do know that never, it's like been 20, 30 years for them, and they never got through it. And their kids did have to grow up without them. So I don't know what has to happen in order to make that connection. But I know the very first thing that has to happen in your heart, you have to know no matter what, you could not have stopped it. It's not your fault. And allow yourself, yes, to be pissed off at everybody, God, the neighbors, the family, whoever else is left around. Yes, allow yourself those things to happen so that you can move on in a healthy way. Because when you hold that stuff back and someone's saying, well, you got to be accountable for somebody else, and your heart is all cracked up, that's a hard thing to get through.
I
Thank
love
you for sharing
so
that.
much, Joyce. I love that you said that. And I
Yes.
mean, I always glean some wisdom from conversations that I have in this community. And I mean, yes, it's absolutely okay for people to feel all the feelings that they need to feel in all the places that they need to feel it. And, so we've got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to make sure that I said this out loud, because I think that I really was thinking and kind of putting myself in everybody's shoes, because I do try to do that as a human being. Make sure that if you're out there and you're grieving, that you don't need to be alone. There are groups, there are people. I'm sure that you have a community of your own loved ones that care about you out there. Make sure that you're asking for help. If you want to talk about your loved person, talk about your loved person. I mean, I think that, for me, I mentioned to all of you guys that I recently lost my mother-in-law, well, my ex-husband's mother, unexpectedly. And my father-in-law is, they've been together for 51 years. And I remember that someone told me when my mom passed away to keep a journal. And so I just wanted to put this on the table. I don't know if it's going to help anyone. I really don't know if it's helpful at all. But I remember like people coming up to me during my mom's services and them telling me stories about my mom that I never knew. Like I never knew my mom was a jokester, right? She was never a jokester to me. She was very serious with me. My mom was always like very shy, like a wallflower. But evidently with her friends, she was like this whole different person. And I loved hearing that about my mom. And I remember people saying, write down your memories, write down what you remember, because one day you're going to want people to know about your mom. And so I shared this. I bought my father-in-law a little journal, and I said, Pops, listen, write in here. How did you meet? Like, what did you guys do on your date? Like, what did you guys talk about? Like, what are all these memories that you have? And when we had people over this weekend for her services, we invited people to share stories in the book as well. And it was like some really funny things and some serious things about how caring she was and stuff like that. But it was just so great to hear those stories that you may have never had an opportunity to learn. And so I think that during the holiday season, I think it would be great to have someone, I might even bring my book out. It's on my bedside table, but to my family this holiday season and be like, what do you remember about my mom? Because evidently my mom had conversations with people that of course I don't know about. Like, what am I, the keeper of all things? And I just love the concept of ideas and writing them down. And even Rick, for you and, your daughters have lived this life, and Joyce, your grandson that I got to meet, they've lived these lives, and how amazing would it be to gift these stories? So I'm just throwing that out there into the world. I really don't know, but let's just wrap up. You guys know I like to babble. So
So
please
do I.
with grief, and we can do our final farewell. So I definitely am going to grab your info, Melinda, from your tag, but please share your info for Roberta's House.
Okay, so like I said, we have the mode program for men that are grieving, and you can find that on our website, robertashouse.org. And also we have a 24-hour homicide advocacy hotline, so that if you're going through
And that's for
the holiday-
homicide.
for homicide, it's a homicide hotline. It's a 24-hour, and the number is 844-227-3478. And it's manned. If you don't get someone, they will call you back within 24 to 48 hours. And it's just, if you just want to talk, if you just want to have any kind of conversation, our advocates that actually do case management with actual homicide survivors, those are the ones that are manning the hotline. So they're very good at what they do. And if nothing else, we can provide you with a listening ear and resources. We can't counsel you in any kind of way or fix your whole life, but we can listen and provide resources, because sometimes that's all you need. You don't need anybody to solve your problems or your life. You just need a listening ear from time to time. And if it's homicide related, we're there to listen.
Thank you so much for sharing that info. I will make sure that that's in the comments. We're going to upload this video onto YouTube as well, and share it on our social media. We'll make sure to tag Roberta's House in it, so anyone out there can grab that. Any last words that you guys want to make before we sign off?
One more thing. One thing we
Go ahead.
One thing we didn't talk about was another disenfranchised grief, and that's parental loss of stillbirth. We have it's called the Hope Projects at Roberta's House, because sometimes people are like, oh, that was just a baby, or you know, you can have other children. This group is for you as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Absolutely.
No, only thing I was going to say is Marshall Funeral Home puts out, they were putting out calendars. I believe they still put out calendars. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A little bit.
Oh, okay. I said
There you go.
Marshall Funeral Home put out calendars. And 1 year, I was incorporated in one of the calendars. Is contributing in regards of crime victim.
You were the centerfold. You were a
I was
centerfold for the calendar.
All right.
I was August.
Mr. August.
That's a good month.
That's a new name. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it was August. But I mean, what's funny is that if I say I'm in a calendar, no one would know it's a funeral home. So we do what we do. But it's associated with Roberta's House, and they just did a profiles to different people doing things in the community, and I was honored to be in it. That's why I just said what Melinda's doing is great work, and her promotion is what I'm talking about. And keep doing what you're doing. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Joyce?
And I would just like to say to everyone that's out there, the holidays are coming up. And not only do I want you to have a great holiday and be very blessed, but I want you to do it 365 days of the year. Every day is a blessing that we're on this side. And if our loved ones were here, they would be demanding it. And I'm just saying that from my heart to you. Please love on yourself and have a great holiday.
Thanks so much for that, Joyce. I absolutely love it. All right, so we're wrapping up. It's 1:02. I always try to just keep you guys for an hour. For those of you that tuned in, thank you so much for joining us again. Not sure what we're doing for December yet. If you have any kind of topics that you would like to hear about, please leave them in the chat box or drop us an email. I'm more than happy to try to tackle those for December and moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us. If you guys need us, we are at mdcrimevictims.org. We do have a homicide support group that meets on the first Tuesday of the month. It's hybrid, it's live in person in Upper Marlboro or via Zoom. And that is once a month. That is for anyone. It's a homicide support group. So please let us know if you would like to join that. I would be more than happy to connect you with our lovely people. It's a pleasure. Thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate you guys, and hopefully, we have been able to provide some information and some guidance to people that might need it. If you are watching at home and you feel someone else in your community could use this information, please feel free to share, put it in your back pocket, share it for later. Grief is never ending. It happens throughout the year. It's not just the holidays. It's something that we decided to talk about now. It could happen in the new year, new years, new starts. Without some old people that are near and dear is tough for people as well. Valentine's Day is tough. Easter is tough. Summer is tough. Vacations are tough. Things are tough. So let's just make each other in any way possible. So thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you all soon.
Amazing to meet you.
Great
Nice
meeting you
meeting
as
you too.
well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.